Okay, the meeting of the Monte Sereno City Council Goal Setting Workshop for March 30th will come to order. Please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Elahi?
Present.
Councilmember Lawler?
Present.
Councilmember Luthold?
Present.
And Mayor Turner.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for taking the time to be here with us this beautiful Saturday morning. And we have chosen to be here this morning because we know that through collaboration, we can all better achieve what we want for Monte Sereno. That is to improve our lives. Every city council member today has worked independently to identify our strategic goals as well as our tactical goals and objectives. And we would like to share them with each other as well as with you, our citizens. We won't think of everything else, bright as we are. So what we want to do is we welcome your input. Let me go through the agenda for today. What we're going to do first is I'm going to open up the meeting for public speakers. You will have 3 minutes, and we attempted to put them into categories so we know that we can group a set of speakers together. The opportunity for the first public hearing, for the first public comment, is to get input from you. And then at the end of the session, we will ask you to come up again. You will fill out another set of yellow cards. And for the second session, what we want is we want you to give us input on how you think this meeting went. We want to make sure that we get our best practices. We want to document our best known methods, our BKMs, so that we can repeat this every year. It is our intent to move forward and to be able to listen to you the coming year and the years to come. So with that, let me introduce.
I left something, but I thought I left
Good
it
timing, Terry.
No, I thought I left it in the other room. It's no big deal.
Sean is over here.
Yes. No, we would definitely be lost without Sean. So.
Okay, so with that, let me ask Terry to introduce our consultant and facilitator this morning, and he'll talk about what to expect for the rest of the day.
Well, first, I just want to welcome everybody. It's awesome that we got folks to come out on a Saturday morning early at 9 o'clock. I really appreciate it. It's nice that it's sunny outside. Having the community come and participate is part of the democratic efforts, and I really appreciate you taking your time out. So I will introduce Sean Spano is here today. He's helped. This is your third year helping us?
Third year, yes.
Third year. It is his expertise is in the area of, well, he has many areas of expertise, but the one we're using today is his expertise in facilitation in settings such as this to help guide groups like the council with community input and staff input and their input on to setting up some new goals for the next fiscal year. The only other thing I just want to talk about is today, of course, as the mayor mentioned, is about the longer term, bigger picture sort of ideas that will help guide staff in the work beyond its day-to-day operations, so we can get a clear picture of what we should be doing beyond those day-to-day operations. And the only other thing I just want to add is I always like to give a shout out at this moment to the city staff that without all of their hard and work and their dedication, none of this would be possible. As I've said on many occasions, including to the council that originally hired me, I've been very fortunate to work at a number of organizations, municipalities that are just definitely top of the line in terms of service provision and best practices. And I just want to say that I feel very fortunate that working here in Monte Sereno, the staff that we have and the community as well is just equal in terms of those elements of a great community and municipal organization. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sean.
Good. Would you like to do public comment, Mayor
Yes.
Turner? And then I'll
Yes.
set the agenda
Okay.
after that?
Okay. So let me go ahead and open this for public comments. And the first speaker this morning is going to be Filippo Alves. You came in last, so you go first.
One of the things I wanted to mention, and I got three things. One is communication, and I know that Terry has worked on the minutes for the agendas, and they for the council meetings, and they all have been hidden and very hard to find. And many people are not going to take the time to really dig through the entire Monte Sereno minutes and council agendas. And I think that we should have some way to just hit on a computer Monte Sereno and an agenda would come up for the council meetings. I know that it's in there, but it's really has been hidden. And I do want to compliment Terry for his work recently on making the council minutes easier to find. But they've got to be really easy because there's so many people like me that aren't very good with the computer or don't have the time to sit down and punch 20 buttons to find it. That's one thing. Second thing is that I sent a letter to all the council members, and you should have received them, concerning the housing problem, and I'm very interested in that. I know that in a few short years, I think it's only about 3 years, this Sacramento requirement for multiple housing is going to come up again. And this is going to be a really hot potato because of the way Monte Sereno was designed in the first place, 50 years ago. It was designed by 5 admirals, which you probably know, and it was to be a residential area but with very rural feeling, and because of that, we don't have any businesses, we don't have any street lights, we don't have any sidewalks as a whole town. In some areas I know we do, but as a whole town, we don't. And there's no more room. And I know that because I've worked with recently on the housing that we finally settled on out on Highway 9. So, based on the knowledge that it's going to come up again, it's going to be a hot potato, it's going to be divisive, I would recommend that the council create a citizens committee on housing. And this committee would be charged with doing a lot of research on different options for housing, multiple housing development. And it should be made up of enough citizens to represent all sections of Monte Sereno, and it would be answerable, of course, to the council, and there should be at least one council member on the committee. And it would also be a liaison to the community, because as you can see, out of 3,000 people, there are 10 of us here who are really interested, and this pretty much describes Monte Sereno. Nobody comes to the council meetings unless they've got a problem. So we have to get to the members, the citizens somehow. And maybe if we had representatives from various sections of Monte Sereno on such a committee. They could also be instrumental in keeping citizens informed. So these are my recommendations. And the last thing is that we need to stop planting redwoods in Monte Sereno. I know that the new development for housing is recommending redwoods along Highway 9, and I would recommend that somebody research this a little better. Redwoods are not local trees. They are terrible for they grow fast and they look good, but they're terrible for their root system, which is very shallow but very broad. So those are my 3 recommendations, and I want to thank you all for listening.
Thank you. And for those of you who don't know, Philippa is a master gardener.
Oh, thank you. and there are sources available to the council for kind of trees that would be acceptable in our new development and are not redwoods. These aren't local to our valley at all.
Thank you. Okay, now let's go to Daniel Above. Daniel?
I hope today's meeting will be productive. For me, the inputs are different from what I'm used to in the private sector. I think it's typical for organizations, even internal organizations, to compete for their funding. That's different in government, but the attitude should not be different. So in light of that, would the presentation materials for today have been different if it was framed in a way of, hey, what value do I need to bring to Monte Sereno with my existing staff and my existing resources, and what do I think I can do for the community? And so I would have liked to see at least a top-down executive summary and goals presented as a starting point for this discussion today. I would have liked to see some backing information and some data about previous year operations summary and trends. I would have liked to see even the bottoms-up operations forecast. Unfortunately, that's not even planned until May. To me, that is a basis for a strategic discussion because it allows you to frame things in a way in terms of ambitions and constraints. So we can have a very pie-in-the-sky discussion about all the things that we'd like to do, but in most organizations, you have very limited resources, you have limited amounts of money, and you would like to make the best uses of those resources. And it is up to the leadership to frame it in a way where we can make best uses. So to me, it's about changing the mindset into a customer service organization. So city government is a service organization by definition. Unfortunately, you don't compete for your funding. Your funding is fixed. And so it's easy to get lazy in that regard. But at every step of the way, we should be thinking about how do we bring value? How do the customers, are they even recognizing the value of that service, and how can we do better? And so it is appropriate to ask some very fundamental questions, and there are masters of marketing in our local communities that do this on a daily basis. We receive how are we doing emails all the time. There's different outreaches, and every time we visit a website, there is some sort of a comment about, can we do better? What is your input? I would ask that at every step of the way, we just ask very simple questions. How are we doing? Are we best in class? Do customers recognize how and when value is added? How can we do better? And rather than have that be a discussion where we're deciding those things, right? There should bring some data to the table, right? There should be surveys. There should be customer outreach. There should be, when issues come up, is it purely a decision of the council, or, when city staff reports are written, are the opinions of these constituents even included in that? It's generally, some sort of an opinion, but did they even go out to bother to even talk to neighbors about those sorts of things, things that might be relevant? So I did come up with a few suggestions for the initiatives. Would you like me to go through those now or save those for later?
No, I think we have 3 minutes. We'll incorporate that into our discussion, so we have it in here.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so now let me call Kathy Smith.
Morning, everybody, all my neighbors, and thanks for serving. I always say that because I really know what you do for no money, and it takes a lot of sacrifice, so thanks a lot. Couple things. One is the roads. I think many of us have had our roads paved and then graveled and then left. And my understanding is there's another step that they're supposed to finish off. So number one, is that the case? And number two, on my street, they did that several months ago in a lot of, like Dave's Avenue, Farragut, that's the streets I'm talking about. And then San Jose Water just came in and dug up a lot of it and put new pipes. So do we coordinate with San Jose Water? Because now it's going to cost us more money to fix it. And if you need a contact, my friend's the vice president at San Jose Water. I could help you, coordinate with him if you need that help. Secondly, is regarding Highway 9, and I know this isn't an issue. I've talked to Terry in the past, and he's tried to help me with this. But it's Saratoga and Monte Sereno, but all the trees on Highway 9 are falling, and they're dry, and it's a huge fire hazard and also a flooding hazard. I called Caltrans, and so did my neighbors for 2 years. They finally came out about 3 weeks ago. They cut down one tree at the end, which is there's some leaning over Highway 9 that are going to fall over. They didn't touch those. We called to find out why, and they said, oh, there's poison oak, so we can't do it. So I don't know if that's where we stop or so anyway, but there is one tree I noticed that probably will fall on Highway 9. It's leaning over that bad, but it's just a huge hazard right there. That's it.
You should have offered them poison oak ointment.
Exactly.
Thank you. So now let me call Bruce Carney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council members, City Manager. My name is Bruce Carney. I'm a Mountain View resident. The last time I was in Monte Sereno was 2 years ago. I was in Carl and Leslie Guardino's backyard receiving an award for the work that the group that I lead, Carbon Free Mountain View, had done to help create Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Silicon Valley Clean Energy, as you know, is our new zero-carbon electricity provider. My passion is for sustainability and greenhouse gas reduction, and certainly a worthy long-term goal for any city, no matter how large or how small, is to do what it can to reduce its city's emissions of greenhouse gases. I know that you're the smallest city in our county, and I know that small cities have very limited budgets, but I wanted to call your attention to the other small city, Los Altos Hills, which has been doing a wonderful job over the last 15 years in measuring and publicizing its residential and business greenhouse gas emissions. That's the handout that I've given to the city clerk. I don't know if it's gotten all the way around yet. It looks like this. So by measuring every year, Los Altos Hills has been able to focus its attention on its emissions of greenhouse gases to understand where they come from and what can be done to reduce them. So what I would like to ask you to include in your goals for the coming year and the coming years is that Monte Sereno undertake an effort like the one that Los Altos Hills has done to measure your greenhouse gas emissions community-wide, not just the municipal operations, and report those to the citizens so that they can take action to reduce their emissions. For example, by buying electric vehicles. That's an area that Monte Sereno is one of the 4 leading communities in our county. Not quite the leading one yet, but perhaps that can be your ambition. by replacing their natural gas water heaters with efficient electric heat pump water heaters. There are a variety of things that residents can do that don't require any city money, but they may well require city encouragement and city recognition of those who have taken substantial efforts to move forward in a very necessary countywide, statewide, worldwide movement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to prevent the kind of tragic consequences that we've seen in the community of Paradise, that we're seeing in Puerto Rico, we're seeing in the upper Midwest in the Farm Belt from flooding and forest fires. These are very real threats, particularly to a community at the edge of the urban wildland interface like Monte Sereno. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and speak to you. And now I will take my things and go back to Mountain View and try to make it a more sustainable city as well.
Thank you so much. And now, let me call our former mayor, Mr. Lon Allen.
Well, Madam Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, members of the council, staff. The hot button for me is citizen preparation for natural disasters, whether they be fires or earthquakes. And I want to find a way to get more people involved with CERT, which is a program run by County Fire and the Los Gatos Monte Sereno Police Department. It's already set up. Unfortunately, of our 3,500 residents, only 17 or 18 are in the CERT program. I know that the mayor and her husband took the program last month. My wife and I are taking it in May. It's a 21-hour program. It doesn't make you an EMT, but after 21 hours, you know more than before 21 hours. And if there is, an emergency, I think, the truth is at any one time, I think we have 3 police cars on duty and 3 fire stations, and citizens are going to have to help other citizens. So I think I told the mayor my goal when my term is up on the civil grand jury on June 20th for Mary and I are going to devote our time on CERT to try to get more people involved. The great thing about CERT is that it takes zero money out of the city's budget. And for citizens to take the 21-hour class, the fee is $36 a person. I'm pretty sure all residents of Monte Sereno can afford the $36. I'd also like to pick up a point that Kathy raised, which is, there are only 2 main arteries in our city. There's Winchester and State Highway 9. And while the eucalyptus trees are beautiful, they are kerosene trees. And in case of a fire, eucalyptus explode. I mean, with 20/20 hindsight, for Caltrans to have planted that on State Highway 9 was a mistake, because if there's a fire, State Highway 9 will be impassable, and I'm not quite sure what we're going to do for evacuation routes. It'd be nice if we in Saratoga and Board of Supervisors could get those trees replaced with something that's not flammable, so that in a case of any sort of emergency, State Highway 9 is available. But anyway, next month will be 40 years that Mary and I have lived in our house. We're not moving, but we'd like to make this a safer place. And so I'm hoping that that's something that the City Council can support on the goals, that it is worthwhile and it doesn't take anything out of the city budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now let me call the other ex-mayor, or the former mayor, Burton Craig. Okay, so let me call Anonymous.
Good morning, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I saw on the agenda that we're doing a check-in on the City Council role, vision, and values document from 2017. And my comment, well, I have many, I'm going to restrict it to, I believe that the integrity and professionalism paragraph should be stricken in order for this document to comport and be consistent with the behavior of the council. In it, it says, the council shall work together to serve the community by respecting and trusting each other. And I would like to play a few examples of how that's not been the case. This is the city staff explaining an error that was made.
As the city council knows, and I've spoken to all of them, there was a clerical error. Andrea can actually speak to it as well.
Yes, actually, what occurred is the commission and committee reports were given to a new clerical support person, and in her attempt to be efficient, she alphabetized those. When it was checked, they was spot checked, and those assignments lined up, and that's what happened. It was a clerical error of a very brand new employee who was trying to be efficient.
Councilmember Lawler and Councilmember Turner both, or Vice Mayor Turner at the time, both indicated that they didn't believe this was true.
The new mayor appoints each council member to several commission positions after consulting with each council member. However, when this year's assignments were published in January, the bulk of the assignments went to 2 members, while 1 member was assigned nothing. This rather large oversight leads me to believe the mayor is distracted and not taking his position seriously.
Prior to publishing the assignments, to be sure that there is buy-in and that there are no time conflicts. I was surprised to find that I had been removed from all my current assignments, that you had 6 committees, Councilmember Elahi had 6 committees, Councilmember Luthold had 3, Councilmember Lawler had 2, and this was all published online, that I had no committee assignments. Evidently, you made decisions about assignments without consulting me or collaborating with some of our council members. I believe that this is an outrageous, lopsided set of assignments that were made without my input.
2 members of the council are effectively calling the former mayor, the city manager, and the city clerk liars. So I don't believe that it is proper to have the statement, the council shall work together to serve the community by respecting and trusting each other, in this document, because it does not comport with the behavior of those council members. It goes on further. We honor our word and keep our commitments. Well, maybe, but sometimes when it's not convenient, we decide not to. And here's an example from Council Member Luthold, who was at the time Council Member-elect Luthold.
Whatever you all choose to do tonight, my personal feeling is I'm looking forward to working with the new mayor and vice mayor, regardless of how they're appointed, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be the same people no matter how this is done. So I want to say I support your action tonight and whatever choices you make, and I look forward to working with you all.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Then when he decided not to keep that commitment,
Ex-Mayor Craig played the tape where I was at that meeting, and I was given a lot of pressure to be a team player and to make a positive statement, and I did.
no one put any pressure on Councilmember-elect Luthold at that time. No one, other than the normal pressure in society to behave reasonably and honorably. But there was no pressure. So I submit these recordings as evidence that the integrity and professionalism paragraph in the council role, vision, and values document should be removed in order for this document to somewhat more comport with the behavior of the council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I realize that some of you are probably still angry over the removal of Curtis Rogers as mayor. We've given you all the time to rage against us in previous council meetings, and you vilified us on Nextdoor. My family has even received threats from some of you through Nextdoor. But the fact of the matter is that 3 council members independently reached the conclusion that Curtis wasn't properly fulfilling the role as mayor. Now, please, we have to move on. We're here to talk about our goals for the coming year. Today, that's what we're going to talk about, and we're going to focus our discussion on these goals. I respectfully ask you to restrict your comments to our goal-setting discussion. Thank you. And now let me hand it over to Mr. Spano. Oh, do you have one more?
Good
Brian
morning.
Michalak.
Mekachuk.
Mekachuk.
That's right.
Thank you.
I want to speak to one point, and that point is sustainability. And I think that we need that word in our goals. And I don't think it should be put near the bottom or use different words. I think the word sustainability has to be there. The gentleman spoke about reducing our carbon footprint, and I think that our brand, the Monte Sereno brand, is very powerful in the Silicon Valley. And this zip code that we share with Los Gatos is a very, that's our brand. And I think that we've got a disproportionate voice in the Silicon Valley and in a lot of the committees that the council members will sit on. For example, I was on the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Customer Program Advisory Committee, and I was amazed of the people that were there, the communities that were represented, how when I was on that committee, I had a voice, and that voice was equal to all the other voices. So our leadership is there, and I think that by promoting sustainability, as Los Altos Hills is doing, is something that we need to do. I think the move to reducing our carbon footprint through electric only is something that we can do. So I would like to encourage you to consider that.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor Turner. So Sean Spanos will be your facilitator today, and I'll take just a couple minutes here to get us organized and preview the agenda and how we'll be spending our morning together. So you have the packet, and the packet, Terry has that, the city manager has that. And, for the public, there are copies over here, and then we can also project those up on the screen. So you have your city manager's memo, which starts off the packet. We will work with the agenda here today. We'll walk through that agenda and use that as to structure our conversation. And I'll talk a little bit about the elements of the agenda. And then you have city staff accomplishments, point of pride, and that will relate to our accomplishments activity. You have the city council role, vision, and values document. We'll do a quick check-in on that and see if there's any changes or revisions. The iceberg model of city work will help get us organized as we start moving into the specific discussion about priorities and goals. And you then have a list of the 7 current goals, as well as a updated document which describes the current goals and the status of those current goals. So with that said, then, looking in just a minute, we'll do a quick little accomplishments activity here, and we'll hear from the 4 council members on what you see as the biggest accomplishments in the city over the last year. And that will be our warm-up activity, and in addition to that, that also provides some substantive feedback for staff. We will then check in on the council role, vision, and values document that was generated in 2017, and then we'll get into the specifics of the goal-setting session itself. So you have 7 goals. We'll do a quick little check-in on those goals, what are the current status of those, and then we'll open the conversation up for council. Any changes that you want to make to those goals, any additions or subtractions, and that might mean that some of those goals stay on the list for the next iteration, for the next year, but some of those might come off the list. And so we'll want to take a few minutes to actually discuss that, and the purpose of that will be to give the city manager as well as staff direction on changes that you want to make to the current set of goals. Then we will open up the conversation to potential new goals that you want to add to the list. And that will be the take us through most of the morning. As Mayor Turner said, we'll have another public comment opportunity after all of that has been discussed, and then we'll move towards wrap-up. Importantly, there are no formal decisions that will be made today. You are not formally deciding what your goals are going to be. We might, if necessary, do a straw poll vote to take the temperature of council and to give staff, to give Terry and staff direction on what to bring back to you later in the process as part of the budget process where you will formally adopt the goals. So today is really about getting the framework in place and giving staff a sense about where you want to take the goals for the next year, and then staff will then prepare some work around that, integrate that into the budget process, and then bring that back to you for formal adoption. So let me just check in. How does that sound for Mayor and Council for our morning together? Does that work for everybody? Excellent. Well, let's get started then on the accomplishments. And so if we just go around and as the agenda says, it could be 2 to 3 accomplishments. It might just be one accomplishment that you see the city having achieved over the last year. And if there's one that you're personally proud of, and that doesn't mean you did it all yourself, it just means that you have some personal connection or personal interest in that. And we'll be, the city clerk and myself and Terry will be taking notes. Mayor Turner, would you like to get us started?
One of the things that I'm really proud of is the fact that we got rid of the litigation that we had with the Hacienda Inn. We spent a lot of hours on closed-door sessions with Kirsten and the council at that time, and we were able to resolve it. Seeing that we have SB 50 and the CASA Compact coming down, wisdom is always 20/20. If we didn't resolve it, chances are we will probably have 350 units on Hacienda.
Excellent. Very good. And I do note that your third goal is to work to resolve all litigation and develop a path forward. So we'll have a chance to come back to that one again. Councilmember Lawler?
Well, I'm new, but I am proud of the repaving of Blanchard's Drive, and of course the improvements regarding safe routes to school to Dave's Avenue. Those are both very visible accomplishments.
Excellent, very good. Councilmember Luthold?
Thank you. I think what I've observed, a few comments on those goals that have been accomplished in the last few years. Great website improvement, helping out very much with communication, certainly something to continue to carry forward. I think smooth operations of the city, I think that's going well, and then we can look for some improvement on that. I wanted to comment also, the pavement project, I think, is a wonderful accomplishment. I think that's something we need to make sure people understand and know how it's going forward from here. And also I wanted to comment on the speed of the resolution of the Hacienda project last year. That was really incredible that that pulled together as quickly as it did and with the accomplishment it did. And I also want to second the idea that getting that done has now locked in a reasonable, or some people would say slightly too much growth there, but it could be much, much worse. I think we're going to have to talk about that going forward with other projects.
Excellent, very good. Councilmember Elahi.
I'm happy to serve the city of Monte Sereno. I'm proud of the role that the constituents of the city of Monte Sereno play, the interest that they show in our meetings, the inputs they gave us from Philippa to Kathy to Lon and Brian. And I think as long as we get that participation and active support and guidance from our constituents, I think City Council can move forward.
Excellent, very good. That's great. Okay, we can move ourselves forward here, and we'll do a check-in on council role and vision. I should also say, just before I move on, you do have a staff accomplishment. So that's one of your documents and a point of pride. And as I was reviewing these, it just occurred to me all the great work that staff has done over the past year, and there's a lot here. So you've got a pretty healthy document with 9 pages of accomplishments here. So I just want to make sure that gets acknowledged, and that ties into Terry's opening comments about the quality of your staff here. Okay, so we have a council role, vision, and values document, and so I had the pleasure of being involved in the creation of this. So this goes back to 2017, and there was a council priority session, and council at that time thought it would be helpful to develop a role, vision, and values document, and there was one in place, but it hadn't been touched in several years, and it needed a little refreshing. So a small ad hoc committee was formed, and that was the former mayor, as well as council member Turner at the time, interim city manager Deborah Fagoni, and then I helped. And so the ad hoc committee put together, developed some draft text, and we refined that and revised that, and then ultimately put that in front of council for formal adoption. So what you have there is council role, a fairly lengthy description there. You have your council vision, and then 6 council values. So our task here is any questions that you have about role, vision, values. Are these still relevant? Is there anything missing? Anything need to be changed or added? So let me just open that up and get your feedback. And let me also say that given the current council, it's your prerogative, obviously, to make changes, but there's nothing requiring you to make changes. So it's not as if there has to be revisions or additions or subtractions. So thoughts, council, about your role, vision, and values document? Yes.
I have one comment on it, which is that I think I see the input from the community in the last election, as well as some of the feedback we've gotten, the involvement of the community, even reflecting feelings regarding the mayoral decision, but looking for the council to take a leading role. Mm-hmm. And I come from a business background. I hear very much the people who've spoken on that, especially Mr. Labouvet, about the council having a role. And I see it much more akin, and I may be wrong on this, not being from city government, mm-hmm. but akin to a board of directors. Okay. And I think I see that the council should be proactive, and that's what I'm hearing is expected of the council. I think the city staff is doing a great job, but I think at some level the city staff almost takes on too much, where I think the council should be held accountable, as the document discussed, but I think we need to be much more proactive in being involved in the setting of the goals and then in being responsible for it. I see in here that we are responsible, but I don't see the proactive nature of the council. So if there is any adjustment to this, that's what I would be requesting, is that the council be much more proactive, reaching out, coordinating with the citizens, mm-hmm. and bringing the citizen involvement in, and having the responsibility to do that, not pushing it down and saying to the staff, you do this.
Good, excellent. Thoughts about that, or any other new thoughts to include?
I do have thoughts about that, and I think to expand on Mr. Labouvet's input here, we're going to look, I think what we ought to do is look at measurable results, mm-hmm. right? And then have our actions, our results. So this way we clearly define our ROI, our return on investment.
And is it, would you, similar to Councilmember Luthold, would you want that integrated into this?
Yes.
That the measurable outcomes, yes. And the return on investment? Okay, very good. Other thoughts, suggestions, or just questions about the roles, visions, values? Okay, hearing none. Terry, as a way to move forward here, is that something that we could work on in terms of?
Can you make it like 2 minutes, please?
Yes, I'll make it one. I'll make it one word: sustainability.
You're sustained.
Fits in possibly under performance accountability.
And we're just talking about where we
Yes.
might fit some of this in here. There's Terry just mentioned performance accountability. So see if this works and if there's any potential changes here. So we act in the best interests of the city. We set measurable performance goals which support the priorities of the city and our individual work groups.
Yeah. My question is, who's going to be reviewing all that? I mean, we can say we're going to do all this, but is there a way for somebody to be reviewing whether the city council meets its priorities, meets its goals, meets the view? I mean, can we set up some system for doing that or some way of doing that?
Yes, so my sense, and you can jump in, Terry, my sense here is that you have the document, current document about your current goals, and it gives the status of what those current goals are, and that's a living document that
Yes, it is updated regularly.
that gets updated regularly, and to the extent that that gets presented to you on a regular periodic basis, that enables you all to see where are we on our goals and what progress are we making. So that, I believe, is built into the process.
It is, and typically I work on updating it, or at least for publication, twice a year currently. It's, we certainly could do that more often.
Yeah, but I'm thinking it's like a student giving a paper and grading himself on it. Is there some framework that could be set up that somebody else grades it? It could be our constituents, it could be some other committee, it could be an advisory committee of some sort. Have you guys thought about any way of doing it? Because if we're grading ourselves, we'll say, yeah, we're doing great, we're really good. But how do you put a formal check on it? And if the staff does it, obviously they're, have some vision on that. But is there a way that we can have a feedback loop set up somewhere where either the constituents are coming back and saying, hey, you guys are doing a great job, or you did a lousy job, and we listen to it when they tell us we're doing a lousy job.
So this might be getting feedback from the community members, or perhaps an outside consultant, an independent consultant that would evaluate and assess progress, or both?
Some other party besides ourselves, I guess.
Okay.
You guys can figure out or make some suggestions and see how that plays.
Okay. Good. Okay, and then Mayor Turner, any suggested changes to performance accountability given the focus on measurable results here? And we don't need to get into wordsmithing, but if you had any suggestions, we can just play with some words or language.
Okay. Oh, did you want it today?
If you have some, and if
No,
not,
not right
okay,
now.
that's okay. And then, Councilmember Luthold, would you see, is there a place in here where you would see that proactive, council being more proactive? Is there, and we can play around with this, but if you had some thoughts, that might be helpful.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it would weave into effective and efficient services or performance and accountability, or whether it would almost become its own item there. So that's something to look at and consider, and maybe bring some of your professionalism in on that. I also wanted to comment while I'm speaking here about Mr. Mekachev's comment about the sustainability. Potentially, that could weave into quality of life for all residents, but I agree about including the word, and again, maybe idea not we're committed, but shall take proactive steps too. These kind of pie in the sky committed words, I don't think are as attractive as active verbs.
Okay, good, excellent. Okay, so we can play around with some revisions here and integrating those in, and then we can get that, Terry and staff can get that back in front of you. Anything else before we move on? Let's make sure we've captured everything. Okay, excellent, very, very good. Okay, so that moves us along here as we go into the council goals, and let me just draw your attention just real quick to the iceberg model of city work. And so as we get ready to discuss the current goals, changes to those, as any potential new goals that might be added to the list, it's helpful, I think, to look at the iceberg model What you all are doing today is on the iceberg model. So there's the water line here, and then everything above the water line constitutes special projects. These are councils, in this case, the governing body's goals and priorities, city council's goals and priorities, as well as any special projects, initiatives that staff is working on to modernize the organization. These are above the water line because they aren't part of the routine everyday work of the city. That's below the water line. So obviously staff delivers services. That is the mission of the city, and that has to happen daily, every single day. These what we're talking about here are special projects that are not part of day-to-day operations, and that is they rise above the water line. So the focus here today is what is above and beyond day-to-day operations that need special attention because of environmental factors, because of community needs and interests, because of what you're all hearing from your constituents. This rises above day-to-day, and we need to give that special attention, and we need to have a unique focus on that. Now, what will, as some of those came up, and I'm just thinking about that litigation issue as one of your priority goals, and many of you have already mentioned the Hacienda project. That was very important several years ago. It was so important that it went above the water line. Let's make that a special priority here because it needs that immediate attention. Now, I'm not saying this is the case. Obviously, this is your decision. But has that already been accomplished to the extent that it doesn't need that special attention, and now we can take it off the list, and it then becomes below the water line? It becomes integrated into the everyday work that the city does. It doesn't need that special attention. The point I would really like to make is even if it comes off the list as a above the water line priority, it doesn't mean that staff is dropping it and not working on it. It just means it's integrated into the day-to-day and doesn't have that special status. It's just part of day-to-day operations. So anything that you might take off the list today will not go away. It's not like staff will forget about it and not work on it. It's just below the water line. Okay, does that make sense for council? And that helps shape what we're doing today. What we don't want to do is set up a list of priorities that really are just day-to-day operational things that the city needs to do. These are special categories that, again, deserve that unique special attention. With that said, then you have your 7 goals. Currently your 7 goals, and we'll take some time here to give you a chance to really talk about what you want to do with those goals, take them off the list, add to them, revise them. And I thought as a way just to get us started, if we can have Terry just walk us through and not give us every single detail, just the headlines here on the 7 goals. And so you've got your status of city council goals fiscal year 2018-19. Let's just get a quick little update, overview about what the status of those 7 are, and then we'll walk through each one and get council to give feedback on what you want to do with those. So, Terry, get us started here?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And if I understand you correctly, we're going to do them one at a time.
We'll just do that one at a time, yeah.
So let's start with the first one, which is improved communication with residents. I am actually looking at the status of the city council goals and for the community and anyone who doesn't know how I'm doing this. I'm just basically looking at from that document which staff creates and maintains. And as Sean mentioned, I'm just going to go over some highlights. On this one in particular, over the time I've been here, we've worked on it extensively. And I'm just going to hit some highlights. Some of the things that we've done that became outcomes and then objectives were like completing some study sessions for key items on city council. So we've done that on a number of things for the city's user and regulatory fees, for the changes to the city's tree preservation ordinance. Of course, we're doing the goal setting and budget compilation as well. And it's always our goal to have study sessions whenever it's an item that's, a lot of information to digest, where the council might want to take a first bite at it, give some preliminary ideas, and then come back later and make a final decision. We've also done a lot since I've been here in terms of providing additional outreach and communications for projects and activities that are of community-wide interest. Our website is much more robust than it ever was. in terms of adding pages for the specific projects of community-wide interest. We are also, increase the radius for notification depending on the project. A good example for that was Hacienda project. We actually notified every resident in the city, and not just, those within a close-in radius. We've also, we're using Nextdoor much more extensively in our e-blast to get out all sorts of information that's important on a number of topics to the community. Another important area is we conducted right when I came, we were working on an IT scan or an assessment, and we got a lot of really good information out of that on all sorts of things in terms of modernizing the internal workings of our organization as well as our external communications. The only other one on this particular, hold on one second. Yes, so I'm sorry. So just the only other thing I think that's really important was in terms of the city's website, we really didn't have a staff person assigned to it. That's their primary responsibility, and so we have implemented that, and that's been working out really well in terms of getting new pages created, keeping it up to date, and being sure that we have all the information on there that we necessarily need.
Good, excellent. So let's open this up for conversation, questions that you have about this goal, any changes you want to make about this goal. And then let me also suggest that if we can walk through all 7 in this way and then we come back at the end, does that goal still need to be on the list or does it come off the list? So let's not decide that yet. Let's just walk through all 7 and then we'll come back and ask you to make that determination. So questions at all, suggestions, recommended changes to this particular goal?
What is that particular goal again? Any of the goals or
No,
just
no.
one?
We're just going to stay on improving communication with residents. So we'll just stay on that one for right now.
Well, I think we heard from the audience that the website is really improved a lot, but to make it even easier, I know when you click on agendas, you get the whole list of everything, and perhaps having a one-button click to a page of just a full page of the full agenda.
Okay.
Just making it even that much easier would be helpful.
Excellent. Good.
You done?
Yes.
The other thing about the website is, I know Jack Lucas was interested. I thought he was going to be here today, but apparently he's not. So one of the things he was interested is putting in a tab for residents and then history, and we can put some of our longtime residents of Monte Sereno, like Jack Lucas and Doug McNeil, on the website.
We do have some information, but the mayor and I have chatted about this, and it would be awesome if we could get additional information from those residents who have a lot of information, and we could add it into what we have.
And the other thing, too, is I asked staff to look at cleargov.com because I think that there are some capabilities for user experience that we can actually look at that will make our website easier to deal with. For example, they will provide you with our budget, and you can actually see our budget online. And it's going to be very easy to look at. It's going to be nice, pretty pictures.
Excellent. So adding features on, making the agenda more accessible, easier to access, adding features on, like access to the budget, and then the sort of featuring prominent community members, long-term community members. So having that sort of special section, a special link towards that. That's good. That's great. And so far, everything's all been geared towards enhancing the website. Mm-hmm. Good. Any other suggestions, comments? Yes.
I guess there's always the push-pull thing that you look at. How many people actually bother to go on the internet and go to Monte Sereno website and then go look at the agenda? A few of them do.
Yeah.
I think with what's happened now, there used to be a Los Gatos Weekly newspaper that printed a fair amount of news about Monte Sereno. It's now mostly real estate ads. San Jose Mercury once in a while puts a derogatory article on top, its front page, but that's about the only time you're going to get coverage from San Jose Mercury. I think we need to go to a hard paper newsletter of some sort, which goes to everybody. People who don't look at the website, they can get a newsletter and look at a newsletter and see what's going on. So we need to, and I don't know whether you do it weekly or monthly or quarterly. Within budgets, we have to take a look at it. It doesn't have to be extensive newsletter. I mean, just some highlights of what's going on, major things that are happening, the minutes, or if you do minutes, it would have to be biweekly. We can't obviously do that, but at least we can say that like you have a plan over the next 3 months. These are some of the items that could go to council meetings. So we can put that on the council meetings itself. I would like to see a hard letter format going out.
Excellent.
Newsletter out. Just to speak to that, we actually have in the budget to do a newsletter twice a year, but unfortunately, it has been something that has just continued to fall off the plate to a certain extent. We are about halfway through completing all the articles for one that I hope will go out, say, in the next 3 to 4 weeks. The good news is we are, before we have, we have 2 positions for the front office staff. We have 1 full-time position and we have 1 part-time position. And as you all know, our full-time lead person out front has moved to Texas, so she's left us. But we were fortunate that we could promote the part-time person into that position. And so that's opened up again the part-time position. But so what we did this time with that is, in addition to that person serving as a backup to the full-time person, we are specifically advertising for someone who can help us with our newsletter, our postings, social media in general, as well as have them taking over the maintenance of the website. So what I'm hoping to get out of this recruitment, which we just posted this week, I believe, is a person who will be dedicated to helping us with this task, including the newsletter. So what I would, even though we were only going to be able to get out 1 this year, I do hear that it's important, and I agree that it's a very good tool to broadcast information to the community. I do hope the council will put it back in the budget for at least 2 times next year, and maybe for more.
Yeah. I think we need to take a look at it in 2 or 4 or 6, depending on, because it depends on how much we want community participation. I mean, things like there's an opening for a city council person. That's something that would go in there. Or if you're setting up a citizen advisory committee that has been recommended, or we're doing something else. It's a way of getting people involved. When they get something in their mail, it could be 1 page or 2 page. It doesn't have to be a big newsletter.
Well, and of course we don't use the mail for that type of advertisements, but we do use Nextdoor and post it on our website and do e-blasting. But what I would hope with this new person, that they could also do some intermediary, maybe like e-newsletters, so that we don't necessarily have them published, every month, which I don't believe we could do, but at least there could be some intermediate in between and a hard copy as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, e-newsletters would help, but I think the paper copy is what I'm trying to emphasize that we need to get out there.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've seen other cities where you have the hard copy, but then you also have it online, so then you've got multiple formats, and that gets out easier to make sure everybody gets touched by it. Excellent, very good. Other suggestions around this goal? Yes.
Yeah, I have a bunch of them, and some of them fall into kind of the more technical aspects of this, but they come back to the bigger picture. I think Councilmember Elahi's idea about paper communications is really important. Tying to this whole question of communications, I think we have to look at how we can use this improved communications also to use the community resources. We have a lot of people. We have reasonably good turnout today, but I think we have a lot of people in the city who want to be involved, and we don't have the outreach to bring them in, welcome them, and give them tasks to do. And so this goes with our budget as well as with our communications. The best way to make a friend is to ask them for a favor. So we need to ask our friends for this favor of coming forward. We have incredible communications and marketing people in this city. We have people with the gardening and the trees skills. We have people with the resources to reach out and help us reach San Jose Water, whether it's on issues relating to understanding what's going on with water or influencing decision-making down the road. Maybe even reaching out to Sacramento on issues with housing or politics. So we need to increase the outreach and then bring the people in to help us is my suggestion. That ties to social media and how we're going to improve the social media outreach and the policy relating to that. And again, I'm not looking at a staff policy of necessarily how staff does more. I'm looking at how we increase the outreach. So council members perhaps curate discussion on Nextdoor on issues of importance that and so actually, and this may relate to our new staff person also, this word curating. I think we need to curate discussions and we need to draw in these resources rather than simply saying we need staff to do something. We need to get other people to do it for us and with us. So continuing the website improvements, I think, is critical. I like one-button ideas as well, but and the history idea that we're talking about, and bringing in more of Monte Sereno's history. Let's gather that while we have these residents who've lived here 50, 60 years. We have incredible resources in that. Let's get that information, but we don't need staff necessarily to do that. We need somebody who's interested in conducting a Monte Sereno history project to take that on and do that. We'll need staff's help to get it onto the website. So,
Sean, if I may, since you're talking about history, I wanted to see if I could call Mr. Jack Lucas here, because he wasn't here earlier, to talk about your idea of the history. Would you want to come up for three minutes?
My idea, I think it's your idea.
I'm not supposed to say that. Come on up.
Do you want to come
Here.
up? You come up to the microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. What the mayor and I and the vice mayor and I discussed was 1986. Some of you weren't even born then. I was in my first term of mayor of the city. Subsequently served 4 more terms for 5 terms as mayor of the city. During my first term, the radio station, public broadcasting, KCAT, came to me and said, we're going to have a fundraising drive. Now stop me, where's that 3-minute warning? We're going to have a fundraising drive, and we'd like Monte Sereno to help us raise money for station public broadcasting KCAT. And sure, I accepted, and the council agreed. We were competing against Los Gatos and in the fundraiser. But before the fundraiser came on the air, they asked me if I would make a spectacular film. It's won several Academy Awards. It's entitled A Mayor Walks His Town, 1986. And for all day, the city council...
On Netflix now, if you want to see it.
You cut me off when so it's a cute little film. We spent all day. We went to a lot of scenic spots around here. The John Steinbeck home, the old Victorian across the street. I think it's a cute film, and none of you have seen it yet. And that was looped for about 6 months, and then we filmed the actual fundraising itself. Several Monte Sereno citizens came in, and they manned the phone bank and took donations. To this day, I don't know if we beat Los Gatos or not, but anyway, I said I would share that film with the city if indeed you'd be interested in it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think, but more importantly, we wanted to have a page on the website to feature your accomplishments and your contributions to the city.
It's in the car.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Sorry I was late. I had a previous earlier meeting, and
Is that something that can be linked so people can just download it on the?
you're asking me a technical question.
Yes,
Linked.
So that's something that we would put on the website and have a history tab on it.
It's on a disc. Can you link a disc to a website?
Yeah.
It's kind of cute.
Yes.
The answer is yes. I'm glad that Jack mentioned KCAT because three of you, of course, participated in Coffee and the Candidates. And I think KCAT, which is community television for Los Gatos and Monte Sereno, has been underused. I think the voters got more information in this last election where they could actually see as well as hear the three candidates. It was at zero cost to the city of Monte Sereno. And right now you have two former mayors on the KCAT board, Burton, Craig, and myself. I'm sure we could find that KCAT thing. But I was going to recommend under communications with the citizens that we have a link to KCAT because they could put stuff up there. And as opposed to next door, I think there's something about actually visually seeing the message. And historically, we've not been involved, which is why I dragged Burton on the board when he went off the council. So it doubled the number of Monte Sereno residents on the KCAT board. But I hope we can do more. And by the way, if you don't have a special meeting on Tuesday the 25th, there's that gala that you've all been invited to. And Mary and I would like you all as our guests for that because I just think it's an unused resource and a great additional way to communicate with our residents.
Well,
but
thank
we
you
will
both.
get that thing posted, and I'm sure we can get a link to the Monte Sereno website with Jack's walk for our viewing pleasure.
You had some
Thank you.
great shots of the Peak Dairy. Actually, I'm actually hugging a cow. And as I said, and maybe I'm prejudiced, but I thought it was a cute little film. And you're welcome to do with it what you want.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you
well,
for coming.
You and I are going to meet later on this.
Yes.
Why don't you give me a call and we'll set up an appointment because you got your goals now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Luthold.
Very good.
No problem.
Oh, yes. Go, come up here, Ms. Alvis.
I'm one of those people that have been here for 100 years. And if you're going to do a history, go clear back to the 5 admirals who lived here, who came from San Diego. That's another whole story, but it's certainly an important part of the history of Monte Sereno because they were the ones, the former mayor, Admiral Inglis, was very instrumental in setting up the priorities for creating Monte Sereno in the first place. So I think if this is a great idea. I love the idea of going back and telling people what the facts were in the development of Monte Sereno. So that's my suggestion.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Philippa, if you can write that up, maybe that could be in our newsletter. If you can write up your article about the 5 admirals, that would be that. Yeah, that could be in our newsletter whenever it gets published. Yeah, okay, or on the website. Thanks.
Okay, yes, Mr. Lebouvet.
I'd like, if we're just going to discuss these one by one, I think for this goal, I would like you to add the element of transparency also, not just communication, but transparency. And I know on the website there's already information request capabilities and so forth, but there's nothing the equivalent of sort of bug tracking or complaint tracking, and what if somebody brings an issue to the city, where is that, how is it pending, what's the status of it? Even status reporting within the city government or within the city staff, if you've got issues pending, if you've got permits pending, what's the status of those things? I know for me, I had some issues. I literally had to come down for the past 2 years, every 2 weeks, to go find out the status. And that's disruptive. It would be much easier to just check a web page. So I would like to see this transparency element added to this initiative.
Go ahead.
Okay, if I may. Actually, that issue related to that was one of the things I wanted to talk about. And again, this is somewhere between maybe special projects versus daily activity. But towards this issue, I was going to suggest the website might link, first of all, information like the status of the City Council goals. I don't know if that's available on the website someplace other than buried under agenda items of something we worked on.
It's located under the City Council tab.
Okay. And again, making it, again, for Ms. Alvis especially, she's my touchstone for can she find it easily? So if she can, that's great. And so that she can see this, and so that we track on an ongoing basis. Obviously, we don't need to constantly track every issue, but as Mr. Lapouvet says, for people to be able to get the status on issues, we're going to come to, I'm sure, returning to the idea of one of the letters we've gotten about the sidewalk on, I think it's Grandview, these types of issues, so that people can get answers easily, because as the city gets younger and younger, we've got people like my kids who don't know how to pick up a phone and reach out to city staff. In fact, I mean, I never, personally am guilty of this, I never reached out to Terry before council meetings on issues of things that were even important. Instead, I came and complained to the council. So increasing this communications and the transparency aspect so people can easily get answers on things, I think is important, and all ties back to the website. I was going to make a comment. Terry mentioned study sessions and the success of study sessions. I think we want to make sure that, again, we find ways on paper to get out information about upcoming study sessions. I'm a big proponent of Nextdoor and website and web blasts, but also making sure that we get people involved in things like the study session, leveraging these resources again. And I think I had one other point, but it'll come back to me if anybody else is talking on other things.
And we can just come, if you remember something from a prior goal, no problem. We'll just integrate that in. Okay, let's move us forward then. So we've got a number of items here to add in under improving communication with residents. Let's move forward and get a quick update on making city council meetings more efficient, your second priority. Let's let the mayor acknowledge community members who want to speak.
Oh, yes, please.
I'll be concise. I think what I heard Councilmember Leuthold saying was leverage community expertise and facilitate involvement, and he used the word curate versus facilitate, but I had that written down, so I think that that's really important, and I think we have to, I think the communications has dramatically improved over the past 18 months, and it's time to just raise the bar. Thanks.
And just on that point there, what I had down in my notes was volunteers, right? You're getting the community members to help volunteer to help in terms of the outreach and the communication with residents. Okay, very good.
So our next item is the city council meetings more efficient.
More efficient.
One of the things that we had talked about, and I want to make sure we carry it forward, is that we bring up future agenda items, and that we actually agendize them and we keep track of them.
Okay. And let's just make sure we capture that, and Terry can give a quick update. So just so I understand that, so agendizing future items.
Yes.
So just talk that through for me a little bit.
Okay. So for example, if I wanted to talk about certain bills that are coming down, right? Like AB 50 and the CASA Compact. I want the council to be aware of it, take a position on it, so that we can communicate it to our citizens. So that when it comes down and the government signs a bill, you're not going to be saying to us, hey, why didn't you tell us? So our way of doing that is to put it on the agenda so we can actually talk about this. Okay. And so we're not in violation of any Brown Act.
Yeah. Good. Excellent. Terry, just a quick update on what the status of that goal is.
So in terms of meeting efficiency, in general, this is one we've done a lot of work on, and we're with next week's meeting, I'm hoping we're implementing what, at least for our current charges, was the last of the current charges. But in general, it was identify and implement short-term, low-cost improvements to make the meetings more efficient. I noted the IT assessment earlier. What came out of that was a number of things, including eliminating the paper packets. We now use an online system. The council all has iPads, so they're able to receive their packets in that fashion. They're also we've upgraded our system that manages the online packet access, as well as the distribution to the city council, as well as access to the agenda and the meeting recording. The system that we had, that's called an encoder, was horribly out of date and needed to be updated, and we've modernized that. So in terms of that sort of electronic managing of the meetings, I would say that we're pretty much at the top of the line on that. The only thing really remaining in this area is the addition of the camera to add video to the audio. We're also our little projector system here is pretty much on its last leg. And also my having to run back and forth during the meetings to change the input from the presentation and so forth. So hopefully with next Tuesday we have on the agenda an item for a contract to finalize all of the last elements related to those things. I think that. Hold on a second. Yeah. So in terms of the charge that was initially given on that, I do think we're getting very close to the end of that.
Excellent. So questions about this goal, and we heard the recommendation, suggestion from Council Member Turner, Mayor Turner. Anything else to add to this? And we will come back and ask whether you want to keep this on the list for, as a priority goal for the next year. But we're not ready to go there quite yet.
Yes, former Mayor Lon Allen.
I'm hoping that we will consider, Los Gatos televises their council meetings with KCAT, and I hope we're going to consider that too. We were talking about having the members of the Youth Commission actually operate the equipment. Again, A, would be zero cost, and B, it's a way to involve the Youth Commission in government. And, given my age and gray hair, there's been so much cynicism about government since Watergate. To involve high school students to see government in a positive sense, I think is very good. So I think there'd be a lot of benefits, and my guess is if we had the kids doing it, the cost to the city would be very, very modest. So I hope that's something the council will consider.
And Lon's just not aware of this, but the council is. We are actually getting started on that. And I think, is it for the next meeting or the one after? It's for the next. Yeah, so next week's meeting, we're basically treating it as a pilot project, but at next week's meeting, the Youth Commission, being led by Burton as the sort of supervisor over them, we will begin the filming of the meetings. They will not be live, but they will then be available on the city's website as well as through KCAT after the meeting itself. Only with the addition of a camera in the council chambers will they actually become live.
Good. Okay, anything else for this priority goal? Any other suggestions, recommendations?
So I think just expanding on what Mayor Turner said, we've already put on the agenda, and this is, I think, a really important change that's already been accomplished this year, the future agenda items item on the agenda, which gives us at the end of the meeting the opportunity to talk about future things. We can't take any actions or do anything other than give a nod towards putting something on a future agenda. But I think what Ms. Turner was talking about is we need a way that we and the community can track once something has been brought up, what the status of that is. Is it being calendared onto a future meeting? Is it going to a committee? Is it going to be dealt with? Or is it resolved and kind of taken care of? So some form of tracking. This is, again, down on the technical level. But so we have immediate awareness once something is brought up, what's happening with it.
Just regarding that, and maybe it's possible that all the council members have not seen all the emails I've sent them, but I did create a tracking system and I did send it out to everyone. It's currently only going to the city council, but we certainly could make it public as well.
Not thinking to carry that forward again. This is the technical part of the day-to-day, and I think it is going on. But I think we start with the pilot project of getting it to the city council, and then we make sure that we share it with the community, because it's the lack of community knowledge of exactly what's going on in city government and with the council that we really need to remedy under the communications section.
Excellent, very good. Okay, moving on. Should we move on to your third priority goal, work to resolve all litigation and develop a path forward? So Terry?
We currently only have one, am I correct? One piece of litigation, which is almost, I'll let the city attorney speak to this.
We do currently have one case, although the city is no longer a party to that case, but the city has been involved in the past. And other than that, we have one claim that had been filed, and to date, no litigation has been instituted in that situation. So that claim was denied. It was referred to the insurance pool, and they are currently handling it, but no litigation has been filed. So technically, the city currently has no active litigation that it is a party to.
So we get a thumbs up.
We get a thumbs up.
Yeah.
Has the statute run on that claim?
It has not.
So I understand that this is, really focused on, the thought in general, but also on the Hacienda project, and that has been completely resolved. So from staff's perspective, we feel like this one is resolved.
And that was a big one.
Yeah, and as I'm recalling, that was really the impetus for that goal.
Yes.
Was the Hacienda project. Yeah.
So I'd comment, if I may, on this. I think the goal I would envision that it transitions from resolving litigation to avoiding litigation. And I think by being very, very proactive, we can get out ahead of these issues. Of course, we can't get ahead of them all, but in terms of avoiding, for example, we're aware of the project on Highway 9 with the subdivision project. That could see litigation from either side or some other direction that we haven't contemplated. I think we can and should be thinking about that, but also working to help avoid that if at all possible. By way of example, on the Hacienda project, there was one lawsuit filed, which was a CEQA complaint by a neighbor related to the Hacienda. CEQA complaints are the Environmental Quality Act. These are very easy to file, and they can be filed usually with a purpose in mind of either delaying or destroying a project or working something out on it. In that case, I believe it was filed to work out the issue with the neighbor. It was very promptly worked out, as it should be. It could have been avoided, in that case, by the Hacienda developer, not by us, but by the developer getting that one neighbor less unhappy earlier, and would have saved us having to get involved with our name on yet another lawsuit. So I think if we can be very proactive, we can look around our community. The pending claim is a slip and fall type of case, a personal injury case related to the sidewalk outside here. That can be avoided by making sure we don't have any possible dangerous things going on in the city to the extent we can. And so that's going to tie into yet another issue, which is going to be better streets, which we'll talk about in a while, and how we can identify problem areas and avoid them. So I think avoiding litigation is something that we can very much proactively try to do.
Yeah, I think Sean's is looking at it correctly. I mean, it's always prevention is better than cure. A concrete suggestion I might suggest, I think some cities have a formal mediation program to encourage their citizens to mediate between each other.
We do actually have, we do have a program for mediation.
What do we have? Do we have a center or do we have a ad hoc program?
We have basically we had citizens appointed to act as mediators, and staff regularly recommends that to parties where disputes have arisen. But it does require both parties to be interested, and to my knowledge, I don't believe we've ever had that situation where both parties were willing to do it. But we do always actively try to get them to that place. If we can't help them, then we do try to refer them to those programs to try to resolve the issues. And we do, with the Hacienda example, staff actively is involved regularly about trying to get those things to occur when we hear there are disputes, to try to get the developer and the neighbors in communication. That's something that we do that's below the line. It could also be above the line, but it is something that we're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, and that's good, and that should be done. I think Mountain View or Los Altos, one of those cities has a full-blown mediation center where everybody's trying to refer. So something is already in place. There's a place people can go to, say, here's a center, they'll do your mediation for you. And so it's not like we're getting involved because at some point the city has to decide on one way or the other. So if it starts off with a neutral place where litigants can go to or potential litigants can go to, maybe if Terry, you can check on, I think it's Los Altos that has a very formal program, and actually they're working with the Mountain View program or some other city program.
Well, I worked in Mountain View, and they'd used a service as well, but it's possible that Los Altos has something different.
Yeah, so we may want to join them. I mean, there's 2 or 3 cities that are part of that program. So we may want to consider joining them so we can refer things right off the bat and saying, okay, this application's come in, somebody's going to post this or you're posting it. Maybe both of you should take a look at that, see how it can be worked out. That way they both avoid, years of time in drafting and architectural drawings and get it right up front.
And just to, because this is something you wouldn't necessarily see, and part of this is my background from planning, but we do spend a fair amount of time when there is, I'll say development project, because that's usually where this occurs, where there may be some residents who have issues with the project, and or staff may have issues with the project, and so we are generally very proactive with reaching out to residents, reaching out to applicants. I wouldn't exactly call it mediation, but it has sort of that a feeling to it, to see if we can help resolve issues that either party may have, either staff with the applicant or say, residents with an applicant's proposal, prior to it moving forward in the process. I mean, it's very much a part of what we as planners typically do. So, and a lot of that, of course, goes on behind the scenes, and the general public and even the council sometimes would not be necessarily aware of it.
Yeah, and I think you probably do an excellent job on that. I'm just saying, can we formalize that and
sure, of course.
See if there's a center out there that does it on a formal basis. And that would be the next level after you guys have done what you do all the time.
So we're not always successful, unfortunately.
But again, publicizing that the city is doing these things, a lot of people don't know this exists. While campaigning, I saw people who brought up kind of neighbor disputes with me and said, could you bring this up with the city when you're in the city, because I don't want to bring it up because I don't want to offend my neighbor. So obviously we need people to be ready to step up and deal with their own problems. But if they know they have some resources available to them, and again, this is a newsletter type of item, if we have a formal program, an informal program, if we could just make sure people know that it's out there and know what staff does day to day, to know that you can make a phone call to staff before you need to escalate a dispute, because staff will help mediate maybe something going on with a neighbor who's got something that's not up to code. We need to, again, complete that outreach to the citizens so they know that you guys are so good at resolving these things right now. They don't know to reach out.
Good. Excellent. Okay, let's move us forward on to number 4, improve infrastructure, transportation, pedestrian, and bicycle safety. And so where is staff on this one, Terry?
So this has probably been overall the largest area that this of work for the city outside of our normal day-to-day operations, I would say. Prior to my arrival, the city council identified improving the city streets as a major priority, and to that end had a study done of the entire street system and determined what its condition was, which and then actually that report's available online if anyone's so interested in finding out about our streets in general. And so from that flowed the idea of doing a multi-year what's referred to as a pavement management program, and it's basically just an overall effort to improve the condition, officially known as the Pavement Condition Index, which I'd never heard of until I arrived here. But so the council, and to that end, the council voted to put a substantial amount of money towards this effort in combination with other funds that we receive locally from local sources as well as state sources. And it was really something that had needed to be addressed for a very long time because our conditions of our streets had fallen into to a category which they shouldn't be. But to that end, and it was awesome that the city council at the time did that, put together an overall program for 5 years and attached a certain amount of funding in order to reach an ultimate goal of the city having streets under the good category, which is 70 points under the PCI system or better. And so to that end, last summer, the city did its very first effort towards that, which was actually the biggest of the 5 years, 16 street segments, as well as added on another project on Blanchard, which was really separate from this pavement management program, which on Blanchard, in addition to just doing street resurfacing, it also included the addition of frontage improvements along the edges. And the reason why that's so important, of course, is that in the long run, in terms of drainage and maintaining the pavement, to stay in better shape, you really need decent frontage improvements. So the council ultimately decided to add that as well to its efforts to improve street conditions and appropriated funds to pay for the frontage improvements as well as for the resurfacing. So the combination of the two, the city spent, almost $1.2 million last summer on street improvements, and this is just, an amazing effort, particularly for a community of our size, to really do something about the condition of its streets. And with the prior council, they decided that they, wanted to continue with doing more streets similar to Blanchard, and to that end, we're have a similar budget, a line item for that, and we'll be doing 3 shorter streets in addition to that will include frontage improvements, but that'll be in addition to the other street segments where we will just be doing work on the pavement itself. So in general, I would say that really is the biggest public works project really in the city's history, and I think it's staff worked very hard on the public outreach and communication portion of it and in the management of it. And in general, we had, very little negative feedback from the public, and mostly, folks were very happy with it all. So those were the main parts under that section. Another important piece. Well, I heard your comment, but is it not true that your street is maintained by the county? No. Okay, on Monday, can you contact us and we'll work with Jessica, our city engineer, because Dave's Avenue by the county. But Dave's Avenue was not part of the work last summer, so it must be a separate. I'm not. So
county and part of city county.
Yeah, so
I know because across the street from me is county, but I actually.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the work you're referring to was done by the county, and if you want to check with me on Monday, sure. the city engineer, she'll be here, and we'll be happy to chat with you about it. Yeah, because the county actually, it was helpful to us because it increased our pavement condition index. The county actually did a fair amount of work over the summer as well on streets that we are not required to maintain. So it actually helped bring our PCI up, and we didn't have to pay for any of it. But we were not completely happy with some of the work that they did, and it could certainly be the portion that you're speaking about. So the other things that are important under this category, of course, are the Better Streets Commission that was implemented, which helps us with the Citizens Advisory Body, where we do take quite a few projects to get their feedback. We did a number of improvements around Dave's Avenue Elementary. We did a number. Did you have a question?
No, I was just about to cough.
Okay. We did a number of improvements around Dave's Avenue Elementary, including to the parking lot. We actually added a left turn pocket on Dave's when you're turning left onto Poppy Lane. We're continuing to work with the school for the upcoming year and the following year after that on other major improvements to enhance the safe routes to school for the kids. We have the senior transportation pilot program, the RIDE, Reach Your Destination Easily program, which the city has funded for 2 years in a row. And then the only other one I wanted to mention. I think that was basically it. Well, it would be the fact that we also hired a full-time city engineer. So we now have a person who is dedicated solely to public works and engineering and the Better Streets Commission, and has allowed us to take a much bigger picture look at what we should be moving forward with, and which includes things like more implementation of the Bike and Ped Master Plan, the Safe Routes to School Phase 1, a study which has a number of other things related to additional work in and around the school. And the staff will likely, I'm assuming this will remain as a goal, and so staff is already working on some new desired outcomes and some specifics in terms of the work plans related to that, which we would certainly, and it could have some needs for budgeting, and we'll be bringing that to you during the study session for the budget.
Okay, very good. Big category here. Questions?
I have a comment. I have a comment from a few of the members of the Better Streets Commission. Some of them have actually felt underutilized, and also they feel that there's a layer of things that they have to go through to get to the city council. So they wanted at least to be able to come to the city council at certain points in time. And seeing that we have a problem in the city for traffic, I think one of the things that we could do is have them take on some of our traffic problems. For example, report on cars that are speeding and what streets do we have traffic on and what days. So this way they can feel that we are using their talents on the streets.
Good. So better utilizing or more fully utilizing your streets commission. Okay, excellent. Other suggestions, comments, questions?
Yeah, yes. Terry, I'm interested. Does this category also include improvements that prevent, take care of the fire issues that are out there, or is that in some other category?
No,
and also the tree issue that Kathy raised as to the trees that are falling over, and does that fit in this goal, or does that fit somewhere else?
I think that's a little bit more along the lines. I mean, I'm making an assumption here, but I think emergency wildfire preparedness is going to be a goal.
A potential new goal.
Potential new goal, and so I would say that that really kind of hooks in more in there. This category is more about improving, bicycle infrastructure, pedestrian infrastructure. Improving the city's street condition, and those kind of things.
And hopefully traffic now.
Yeah, so it is a transportation infrastructure goal, right? Cars, bikes, pedestrians, etc.
Okay, so I have a comment. Again, I just want to echo the issue. I've heard the same issue come up repeatedly about the better streets, people feeling underutilized. And also, I'd add another word to that, and that is empowerment. So that if we're able to empower those people on better streets to really present action items or suggest those action items both to staff and to the council. So I think really making use of that, I think feedback about intersections that are issues, feedback about some of the maintenance of the of shrubbery that's affecting signage. Those are the kinds of things where the Better Streets is out there. They can be our eyes and ears walking around to give us that information. And we do need to find that balance of the right path between Better Streets reporting to City Council and reporting to staff and understanding what their role is. But I think their role should be greatly expanded. At the same time, we've got the idea, we have a Better Streets Commission as our example. I know it doesn't fit exactly in this transportation infrastructure, but Mr. Mekachek's issue of sustainability, I think we may want to look at a sustainability commission, which would leverage the community's resources. And figure out what that falls under. But I think the idea, we have Better Streets as an example where lots and lots of people have been involved with that over the years. I don't know how many people make it up currently, but it's five. I know people wanted to be on Better Streets, and they are wanting to be more active in terms of having their input heard and acted on. I think the same idea for commissions such as sustainability might work for us.
One of the things that they could also do is to engage with residents along Daves Avenue, the elementary school. So this way we are sure that the kids there are safe, right? And that we monitor the traffic in that area.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify, maybe this will be an action item, but when the Better Streets Commission was established by ordinance, it was specifically drafted so that their direction was to go to the city manager for his decision-making of what would be appropriate, what appropriate steps should be taken. They don't have any independent authority, and so that may be something that you want to look at changing. But the way it's currently written, their job is to advise the city manager and not to do anything on their own.
Thank you.
And all that means for me is, a lot of times the advice we get from them can just be directly dealt with through whatever department, usually Public Works, of course, deals with, and so it's not really necessary to bring it to the city council. But there have been occasions since they've been formed where it definitely, we brought it onto the city council, so you could hear what their opinion was on certain things, including back when we were considering the assessment districts for paying for the frontage improvements on Blanchard. We took all the information to the Better Streets Commission and got their feedback, and then brought that to the city council. And we've also gotten their feedback on a number of other things. I won't go into all the topics. And then that did filter up to the city council. Oh my gosh, I was going to say something else related to this. Oh, yes, and just so you're aware, the work that around Daves Avenue School, including improvements to Poppy and Bruce and what's the other street around there? Vista. We are... that's sort of our next highlight of where we want to work, and the Better Streets Commission will be fully involved in the discussion on this. We had held off on any improvement to the street condition on those streets, or on some of those streets, because we are looking for grant funding, which we think we should be able to secure so we could do a much bigger project in terms of sidewalks, potentially bike lanes, frontage improvements, as a bigger picture look at safe routes to school and improving the condition for students and other pedestrians in and around the school. And we'll likely, as part of the budget workshop, be bringing you some preliminary thoughts on what funds might be available and what additional funds we might need to add in. And of course, if that does get approved as if it needs to be approved as a budget item, the Better Streets Commission will be the beginning place where all that discussion begins.
And Dave's Elementary School is actually pretty important because it's an NCIP location. That means that for CERT, when we have a disaster, we're going to bring people over there, and also some of our disaster recovery procedures are going to be done on Dave's Avenue Elementary School. Right, Mr. Allen?
That is correct, Madam Mayor. Yeah, very good.
Okay.
Excellent, very good. Anything else on this big goal that you have on your transportation infrastructure goal?
Well, if we're talking about pedestrian safety, is there a way that we can improve our sidewalks? I know there's an incomplete sidewalk along Highway 9. In that vein, kind of creating a plan for timely resolution of these issues that is measurable and concrete.
Well, regarding that specifically, I know that in the past the discussion had led to, indicating there wasn't funding available from the city, but I do believe that we do have the ability to fund, or at least partially fund, such a possibility. This can be part of the budget workshop, and I can certainly, have the city engineer take a quick look at, what an estimate might be for the cost of that. I have agreed with the resident that I have no idea why there was this piece left out. It's just not clear.
Yes, go ahead.
I just...
Can you come up here, please?
Mike, yeah.
Hi, my name's Allison Seidler, and my husband and I and our two daughters just moved into Monte Sereno from Saratoga in November.
Smart move.
Yeah. We live on...
They moved next door to us.
Yeah, we're back neighbors with lawn. And I met him in the home improvement style across the fence without seeing his face initially. But now I got to meet him in person. So we just moved there. We have two young daughters. The people redoing their house next to us have two young children. Two other families have just moved with young children, and I very much agree. I would love to have a sidewalk so we could walk to town.
Thank you. Hang on, Philippa. I think somebody back there. Can you? Okay.
I don't know where this comes in, but at one time, because of the need for keeping this area rural, which was one of the major reasons that they incorporated Monte Sereno, one of the requirements was that we don't have sidewalks, which is at the present time questionable, but that's one of the reasons. And we don't have street lights because they wanted it to stay rural. However, they did specify that all developments and all houses should have street lights as part of the requirement for building in Monte Sereno. And I don't know if you guys remember that, but it's someplace in the written specifics for Monte Sereno that everybody should have a street light out on the sidewalk or out on the edge of their property. And this would certainly help safety for people who are walking dogs in the evening or out themselves. But I noticed that we don't have this, but it's written someplace that we should have personal street lights.
So I think one of the things we're going to do is we're going to research that.
Okay, great. I just wanted to remind you that somewhere it's there.
Thank you, Philippa.
My question was simply...
Can you come up here so we can hear you, please?
Hi, I'm Marlene Philly, and I'm on San Benito Way. And I'm wondering, I believe you just excluded Bruce from the next set of streets that's going to be worked on. And I'd like to know why. Right now, I believe historically and appropriately, I've been here my whole life, people are pretty organized about driving up Bruce Avenue and staying on Poppy until they get to Dave's.
And I think that's appropriate, and I'd just like to hear more about that. If you're going to be developing Poppy, that seems to me that that's encouraging people to take that extra dog leg to get down, and then people will be competing for where to turn to get in and out quickly.
Okay, thank you. And can we just get back to her later then?
I did go over that. I can certainly repeat it. With Bruce and let's see, it was Bruce, Vista, and Poppy. We held off because we're looking to get additional grant funding, because the city in and of itself, in my opinion, as the city manager, does not have the budget to do everything that needs to be done. But it's highly likely that we should be able to obtain some grant funding to help with any sidewalks, any curbs, any gutters, bike lanes, and so forth that we might need to install. So the process for doing that, we're not able to do that so that we could get the pavement done this summer as well. So we're working on that now through the summer and the fall. And what we hope to do is implement a much larger project next summer during the construction season.
Okay, are we ready to move forward? We move on to number 5, your Healthy City initiatives, and where is the city on this one?
So for this one, a number of things we've been working on is we included, it was a wellness fitness component to the annual city picnic, which we did this past year. We had a number of booths, several of which were related to this topic. Included in engaging the Youth Commission in attainment of this goal. I think the Youth Commission with Andrea's leadership, did a really major effort around what was called the hygiene drive, and that was last summer and fall. And the other really big ticket item for us was that the city did receive its age-friendly city designation, which was approved by the World Health Organization last year. And what that meant is there were a number of categories where we had to show that we were complying in terms of being an age-friendly city. And we met all those check boxes, and we were actually designated by the World Health Organization. So those are kind of the highlights of what we've been working on for that one.
Can I take a different angle in this one? With regards to Brian's comment on sustainability, I wanted to look at the budget with respect to what I'm calling social contributions. So I think what we ought to do is to have the city council have a discussion and decide on a policy regarding our social and nonprofit contributions. For example, our music on the park, arts, wine tasting, Easter egg hunt, and some of the things that you talked about. I think in our discussions, we should have the council reach a consensus about funding requests. Does it make financial sense for the city and staff to consider capping this line item at some determined amount annually, allowing the remaining funds to be returned to general fund beginning each year? And this way we can manage our budget more, and it talks about the sustainability that Brian was talking about as well. So financial sustainability.
So in terms of those requests, currently, just so the community and the newer council members may not know, we don't set a, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't set a limit. What we do is we have people give us their request, which is for this, it's April 16th, I think. Yeah, so on April 16th, the council will see all the requests from the various community groups with the amounts they're asking for. And that helps us move towards the budget draft budget compilation. And so currently that's what we do. We don't have some cities do have an amount. They have a competitive process. So, that's something that we certainly could adjust.
Thank you.
And I just want to
say that one more time, Andrea.
The amounts are approved by the council.
Yeah, ultimately, yeah.
Yes,
Good.
ultimately, yes.
And I just want to make some clarification. I'm pretty sure that Brian's comments along sustainability are, in terms of the environment.
I know.
Not necessarily.
Well, we were working it into transportation too, right?
But I don't want to speak for him.
I get a point, right, Brian? Okay.
Excellent. So, questions, comments, suggestions for this Healthy City initiative?
is this where we could bring in sustainability
If you thought that it fit here,
in terms of, green energy, et cetera, encouraging residents to?
I mean, the desired outcome read, and these, of course, can be adjusted and added to, a city that cares about health of its residents. Actually, that was the only desired. That was the only desired outcome.
Relates to clean air and
it
clean
does.
water,
It sure
et cetera.
does.
Yeah. So, exploring sustainability here.
Yeah.
Whether that fits.
So you'd be looking at the housing codes also as setting up all electric homes and things of that sort also under this item.
Yes,
so
and
that
that's
as you go along in the future.
Yes.
Things are coming down the pipeline. And the cost of electric items now appears to be matching the cost of gas items. For example, your gas heaters or the water heaters, the electric are now 3.5 times more efficient. So you could actually replace it and not be spending any more money on energy. So
And this is
it
an
may become
effort.
easier as you go on.
And this is an effort that the city and our building official is already working on.
Okay. Any?
So
Yes.
I think that I want to echo that. I think this may be one. And I know this we come back to at the end, but we could greatly expand to include environmental sustainability issues, initiatives related to energy use, measurement metrics that we heard about at the opening. So I think this seems the natural one to roll into either by changing the definition or changing the title and expanding it to have some of the magic words.
Very good. Excellent. And we'll come back to that after we get work through these last two. So the next one is a plan to improve City Hall. And how is that one progressing?
Well, in a couple of things I'll just note. There was a number of years ago that there was some work done around assessing the existing two little buildings we have here, and what could the city potentially do in terms of possibly creating a new civic center. And there was a study done around that with some ideas. At the end of the day, right before I arrived, the city council decided that instead of pursuing a new facility, that the city, and this was tied into the pavement management program, that the city really should be focusing its efforts on its largest piece of infrastructure, which is its city streets. And so any more thoughts and discussion around that ended, and the council, of course, moved forward with instructing staff to work on the streets. However, they did include a line item budget in terms of doing some upgrades to the existing city hall. And the good news was, working through the report that was done and the building official, that in general, our little city hall is in pretty good shape. It's got a good roof, it doesn't have leaks, the electrical's in pretty good shape. Just in general, it still has a fair amount of useful life to it. So basically the money was taken to, do some improvements that it desperately needed: new flooring, new paint, some new landscaping, and
New carpeting.
New flooring, yes, new carpeting, that smell when I first came in here was really something. But the good news is, I think, we did a number of other minor improvements, just things to make things more livable and more efficient. And I think that for the most part, we have a solid building that's in good shape. And there's really, even now, I think there's no need to consider anything else, and that the city, was right in focusing the money on fixing the city streets.
Good. Questions at all? Anything to add, subtract from this priority?
Is there? Oh, go ahead.
I guess the item that you do have it, Terry, the opportunity for using the former post office. I think
yes.
Maybe we need to move that up as a priority item, because that needs to be taken care of.
And that's a good question, because it basically, the discussion on what might have been done was tabled by the prior city council, so it's just basically inactive. And we certainly can bring that up again. As many folks may know, there was a line item added in the budget to potentially to study and potentially move forward with using the building next door as some form of annex for the county library that we're part of. But between the survey that was done and discussions with the prior city council, it was determined that there wasn't really enough need for such a thing. So basically, at the meeting where council was looking for input on how to move forward, the item was just tabled. But there was the discussion of let's come back at some point in the future and what could we possibly do with the structure. So we do with this the city. No matter what we would do there, we would have to spend some money on some improvements. It doesn't meet all of the ADA requirements, and just the usability of the space, it's broken up and it's not very useful. It would have to be worked on. And so last year's budget included, I believe it was a $35,000 line item for making those types of improvements. And it's possible that we could just keep that in there. But as I have noted to the council, it's very limited, the uses there, because we don't permit commercial uses in Monte Sereno. So it's really limited to community-type facilities. But it certainly is something that staff could bring back to start the discussion again.
Yeah, I mean, we need to put it to use. I mean, it's just sitting there, and we need to spend the money on the ADA and everything else. So if we can prioritize this, I mean, the city uses. I mean, the youth commission could use it. KCAT could use it when it's doing a studio function that I can think of right now. The city street commission, I don't know if they have a place to meet someplace. I mean, there are, how many commissions do we have in Monte Sereno anyway? There's a youth commission, there's a
we
city
have
street.
three. We have the youth commission, site and architectural commission, and the Better Streets commission. And they do need to use this room because we need to be able to use the recording system and all
There's
that.
a suggestion to have a civilian committee for the meeting the requirements from the state as far as the housing element is concerned. So it might just be a meeting place, maybe just a conference
It certainly
room.
could, because we, outside of our little conference room,
Yeah.
and this space, we don't have, most communities have some place that's can be multifunction, I would say, and while it's still pretty small next door, if you adjusted the main space to make it more open, it certainly could be used in some fashion as a community resource.
I think it would be worth putting it out to the community, engaging their interest.
Yeah, and basically because of the direction from the city council on the using it for the library, that was our focus. But we certainly could do some form of survey to find out what the residents would might be, what their needs might be, and what it might be used for. We certainly could do that.
Good. Let's move it.
Okay, let's go on to the last one, which is regional conservation efforts. So participating in those kinds of efforts. And if you're following along, it's on the bottom of page 10.
So one of the objectives was provide residents with relevant conservation information and programs. We are, between the information we have available at the front of City Hall, as well as information that we publish on Nextdoor and through e-blasting, we are, constantly sending out information around regional conservation efforts related to water conservation and energy conservation. In terms of having a relationship with all of our local utility providers, one of the first things I did when I started as city manager is I went to all of the utility providers and met with the chief executives of the organization as well as staff, so I could create a working relationship with them. I think in general we have a good relationship with all of the service providers, which is really important for us because we're a very small city and we contract out with for virtually all of our public services. The only other part was that was really important into this one was the rollout of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Program, and that has been completed and has been extremely successful. So I think in terms of the objectives, desired outcome and objectives, I think we part of this is ongoing, I'd say, and likely falls into our day-to-day, continuous operations, and then anything like Silicon Valley Clean Energy, that part we have completed.
Excellent. So questions about regional conservation efforts? Okay, hearing none, then let's take a look at these. Let's go back over these and see what you want to do with these priorities moving into the to the 2019 list. Please,
Can I
yes.
make a suggestion?
Yes.
Can we add some goals in here? For example, the housing element, taking a look at that?
What I'm thinking is let's make some decisions on what's here, and then we'll open up
Okay.
the floor to the new
That's
ones
good.
that
Okay,
come
that's
in
good. Yes,
that are not
yes,
on
yes.
currently on the list. So if it's okay with you, I'll tell you what I'm hearing from you and the questions and hearing from Terry. Improving communication with residents. There seemed to be, as I was listening to you, lots of interest in this, and then you had several suggestions on improving the website, improving communication, and it sounds to me that you would like to keep this on the list. And we can do a formal straw poll vote. If we just nodded heads, that might even be easier unless we have to go to the straw poll vote. But I saw nods of heads around here. Does that make sense to continue on with the revisions and suggestions? Making city council meetings more efficient. It sounds to me like a lot of progress has been made, and there isn't a lot more to do. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not as if this falls away and staff will no longer be working on city council meetings. It just doesn't rise to the level of a priority, and that this one comes off the list. Am I hearing that correctly around the dais here?
Yes.
And then number 3 sounds to me like it comes off the list, work to resolve all litigation. And to Councilmember Leuthold's point, the day-to-day operations of the city is we are delivering services effectively, and we're doing that in a way that does not open us up to legal jeopardy and litigation. That is a sort of a cornerstone of the way Monte Sereno does business. So this one comes off the list, but it's not as if staff now is going to be out there being cavalier about things and inviting litigation and opening themselves up to legal jeopardy. So does this one come off the list with that caveat that this goes below? And I'm seeing nods around the table here. 4 stays on the list. This is probably your biggest ticket item here. It's the broadest. As I'm understanding this is a major concern to your residents here, to your constituents. So with all the suggestions that were made, infrastructure transportation stays on the list. Make sense? Promoting healthy city initiatives. It sounds like this is an opportunity, as several of you mentioned, to broaden this one. And this one might, and let me check my understanding of this, this one might be something like promoting healthy, healthy and sustainable, something along those lines. And let me just check with you. If you wanted to broaden this to include sustainability under health, that is, this one captures some of the environmental initiatives that you might take on. So let me just pause there and open that up. Is that a direction that council would like to go? Let me just check my perception there with you all. Councilmember Lawler, what do you think?
I think that's great. I think we do need to fit it in somewhere, and I'm wondering if promote healthy city initiatives and participate in regional conservations can be part of the same broad goal with those items underneath it.
And working in the sustainability that environmental sustainability is a feature of promoting a healthy city.
Yes.
And which also would include participating in regional conservation efforts as part of your environmental sustainability.
Yes.
How does that sound, the council?
Sounds good. Yeah, I think you can work on the wording, obviously, but I think we need to have environmental sustainability in the title.
In the title of the,
and I think healthy city with the square quotes around it is good to go ahead and leave in there, because I think we can all agree that a healthy city is one with environmental sustainability and conservation, and then we can work on the sub goals and the action items underneath that. So maybe it's promote healthy city initiatives, including environmental sustainability and regional conservation efforts.
Yeah.
Would this include also fire hazard, like with the trees and everything? Because that to me is huge. We don't want our houses burning down and landscaping and all of that.
And it might include that, but then as we move into the next segment on the new goals, it might be that there might be a new goal, as I'm understanding some preliminary discussion from council, that takes this on head-on as a standalone new goal, potentially.
Yes.
But and just given the public comment and that, it needs to be in here somewhere, whether it's incorporated here or as a standalone. Council Mayor?
I think Mr. Lebouvet has something to say.
I don't we have to reinvent the wheel here. I mean,
Can you come up here, please, so we can hear you?
the transportation goal, I mean, if you just look at the guiding principles, some of these things are explicitly captured already. And so in guiding principles is community safety, which is an umbrella for infrastructure, transportation, pedestrian safety, but that could be expanded to include also some of the safety preventative measures. And then healthy city is really, there is an explicit environmental sustainability item under guiding principles. I would just suggest to, try to stay with existing language also.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Spano.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and just before we move on, are you okay with this, Terry, in terms of the direction here? So we're bringing together healthy cities, sustainability, and incorporating in regional conservation.
Conservation as well as a group.
Right,
And
with some rewording of the
Yeah.
goal language itself, priority language itself.
No, I think that's a great idea.
Good, good. And so we feel like, Terry feels like he's got enough direction here to bring something back. Excellent. Developing a plan to improve City Hall, as I heard the conversation, and it doesn't mean that you won't continue to make these minor improvements and upgrades, but that it comes off the list as a standalone priority item.
I was thinking maybe we could just...
and with the post office, yes, and the
Yeah,
post office, that work will continue on.
Yeah, so do you want to make that as a priority item or under the waterline item?
Yeah, I think it becomes a work plan item.
Yes, I would say that if there's a consensus tonight, it tells me that you would like to, or today, it's not tonight. If there's a consensus today, just by nods of heads, that you'd like to reactivate that discussion, I certainly can get that started.
We'd like to do it. It looks like otherwise it's going to just never get done, so that's why we need to probably move it
Like I
as a
said, it
priority
was
item.
tabled, and I've just been waiting for an opportunity to talk about it, and here we are.
Great. So council's directing staff to resurrect the post office, repurposing the post office building.
Make it usable.
Good, and that will continue on as a staff work.
As a goal or as a
No, just as a
underwater?
work plan, just a
Okay.
work plan item, staff will be working on that, right? But it doesn't need its own priority standalone goal.
So we have not agreed to improve the
No,
the post office, right?
No, you've directed staff to look into what it
Okay.
would entail and what the budget implications would be if.
To the city council.
And yes, exactly.
We'll then make a decision.
Right.
Yeah, and just the last one, I think we already captured that one. I'll let the mayor recognize you.
Quickly, please, because we have only 45 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to be quick. This may be a radical idea, but in the fact that housing is going to be a major question in the future, in the near future, this site is prime for development. And it's possible that we want to consider this whole area as a possibility for multiple housing in the future, because we're going to be asked to provide that by the state. So we have to be thinking forward into the next 3 or 4 years. This is a prime location for multiple family housing, and it might be available to build something here using this particular site to create multiple family housing and a new city hall. For example, we could have a city offices in the lower section of an apartment building, and I use that apartment building carefully. but multiple family housing. So we might want to consider the possibility that in the next 3 years or so, this site could be used for development of multiple use.
Okay, thank you. And I think we'll get to that.
Excellent, very good. So we, as the mayor just said, we have 40 minutes. We're going to now take on the new goals. Do we need a break here? Do we need a 5-minute, 10-minute break here?
I don't think so.
Okay, or we can just power right on through?
Yes.
Okay, okay. We will let the city manager take a quick break, and we will continue to power on through here. So we are on to new goals here, and you now have, by my count, you have 3 existing goals now with the changes that you just made. So let's open up the floor for new existing ones. And I've heard 2 mentioned so far, one around housing and then the other around wildfire management, natural disaster management,
Yes,
something along those
wildfire
lines.
emergency preparedness.
Emergency preparedness. So which one do we want to get started with? Councilmember Lawler.
I'd like to see as a goal developing a strategy to address and respond to current and future California housing requirements.
Okay.
And underneath that, specifically this year, creating a citizen-led task force or committee.
Okay, and I'll direct our attention here, and I'll just read this off the agenda. For each new goal considered, discuss how it fits in the framework of the current goals and the extent to which council and staff are organized and prepared to take it on. And then the other question is that Terry and staff will be looking for, what is it that you want to accomplish with that new goal? So that gives him direction, so he knows what to prepare when he brings this back to you. So responding to, and one more time, Councilmember Lawler, responding to housing.
To current and future California housing requirements.
Good. Okay, so thoughts about that, additions to that? Yes, Councilmember Turner.
So there are a number of bills currently in the legislature designed to target the housing crisis. And most of these are intended to remove zoning control from local communities. So there are 2 initiatives specifically, the SB 50 and the CASA Compact. And what I'd like to do, we're forming an ad hoc committee tasked to understanding these bills, because the governor will actually sign the bills, I think October the 13th, and it will be taken into committee April 26th, so we don't have a lot of time. We want to assess the impact of these bills, and we want to propose a position for staff and city council to take.
Okay, very good. So let me just get Terry up to speed real quick here. I know what she's talking about. Okay, good. So, good, excellent. So, and we'll check in with the rest of council. So this goal would be around, as Councilmember Lawler said, would be around state laws, housing requirements that are in play, in process in the legislature. And the goal, the vision that council has is we would have a deep understanding, a full understanding of what those are, the implications and impacts for Monte Sereno, and that developing a position that the city will take in response to these bills and housing requirements.
Sean, there was something before that. The city would take a position of whether they wanted to agree or modify or oppose some of those laws that would take local zoning away.
Right.
So before we get used to what it is, we'd like to have some input as a local community in terms of local control. I think that's what the mayor was thinking about.
Right. Good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And several cities.
Can you come up, please?
And introduce yourself.
Ed Turner. Several cities are already organizing to oppose these bills. These bills are egregious. Scott Wiener, the senator who is behind SB 50 and several other authoritarian bills, has made statements that single-family homes are immoral and that he wants to demolish single-family homes and put 75-foot-high apartment complexes in their place. That's coming. It's coming like a bulldozer. And we need to do something. Other cities, we're behind. We haven't done anything yet. Other cities are already moving to oppose these things. Our own representatives, and I use that term very loosely, Evan Lowe and Jim Bell, are promoting these things. Evan Lowe stood in this council chamber and told a few months ago and told us we were going to have to tear down some single-family homes and build apartment complexes. So these people are not representing their constituents, and they need to be told about it.
Good. So part of that might also be exploring partnering with other cities who are resisting
Absolutely.
and developing strategies to respond to the state
Absolutely.
bills.
And there's a meeting in Cupertino next week on this.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Anything else that would go into this? And right now what we're doing is you're directing staff. What is it that you want to see happen, accomplished as a result of this goal? Yes.
So back to the kind of the title that Ms. Lawler brought up here about responding to current and future housing requirements. I consider maybe adding and to that preparing for the next housing element. So I'm hearing this is splitting into two directions, or I'm thinking it splits in two directions. One is the advocacy type, the getting the understanding and then taking a position, working with other cities that are similarly situated, working with the League of Cities when they are doing what we want them to do, but not when they're not. But at the same time, I think an entirely separate track is the one, and maybe this goes under the same, maybe it doesn't, but is the very practical, down-to-earth, getting ready for the next housing element, which will be influenced by these things, but we need to be well out ahead of. As Ms. Alvis brought up, we need to be looking, resurveying, prior councils have done this, exactly what land and zoning we have everywhere in the city and the sphere of influence. And then I think one of the lessons that we bring to this is we need to get ahead of the curve on development. And so the way to deal with the housing element, again, this is just an idea, but we get a commission out there, we get the council, we get staff and everyone involved. But if we can get our zoning aligned in advance, and then we can get projects that fill in a way that fits the community's goals, and we control that, then we end up with avoiding, hopefully, some of these problems where Ms. Turner is very concerned about what might happen with the zoning on Carl Avenue under some of these bills. The bills haven't gone through yet, which is why we need to try to influence them and get our citizens active to influence them as well. Understand them and then determine how to influence them. It may be that the city council or the city doesn't take a position, but gets the information out to citizens who can take their own positions on those bills. So we need to do that. But then getting out, doing our very proactive survey of the zoning, expanding what's been done before, and then determining what happens. What are we going to do with the church property? That's going to be a prime target in the future. Is there a way that we can actively control what happens by doing something that involves the neighbors and makes it acceptable? What are we going to do about City Hall? This is one of the prime spots that could be targeted to put up 50 or 60 units in the future if we don't control it in a way that might consider zoning it for something that is 6 units on top of a very nice multi-use structure. That, again, we need to explore these things, bring in the community and the neighbors so that we can have control of our city, because there's this danger it's going to get taken away from us.
And I think along those lines, we need to be able to identify what properties around Monte Sereno are going to be targets.
And previously, I mean, the prior councils did, over the last 15 years or more, incredible amounts of work. I didn't participate in the big Dave's Avenue elementary discussion where the community came together and everyone hated everything. And this is what we hear. I mean, this is the problem we have. People come to the council when they hate stuff. But that was, I mean, this is an idea we could almost use productively. Get everyone involved by letting them know which parcels in the community are subject to development, and then get everybody involved in the brainstorming on this. The neighbors around the church were not nothing can ever happen at the church, but what was being proposed that might have then been locked in seemed a bad idea at the time. In light of the zoning that's coming along, it may seem like it's an excellent idea, but we need to figure these things out. So the housing element preparation, I think, is either part of this or its own line item.
Good, excellent. Okay, other thoughts around this?
There was a
Yes, Mr. Lebouvet.
One additional element should also be to proactively use the general plan and develop some, in the city guidelines, to develop some strategies to mitigate, some of these existing things. And so, I know that there are other communities that are already proactively modifying their general plan and their design guidelines in order to essentially give them future control, and so they're so just as California is taking proactive measures, so should we to protect our community.
Perfect,
Thank
and
you.
doing that through the general plan.
Okay, next, I think, Councilmember
I was
Lawley.
just trying to summarize it. I think Ms. Lawler had proposed setting up a committee, a citizens committee, and that was one thing. And then there was a discussion on an ad hoc committee to handle the legislative matter. I'm trying to figure out, is this going to be two separate things, or do you want the citizens committee also have a legislative component?
Well, we
to that?
actually started on the ad hoc committee and with Terry Blount and Sean Luthold, and we were going to bring it up at our next council meeting to have an okay to look at the CASA compact and SB 50. Now, the other one, we haven't done.
Citizens committee.
really, and, yeah,
So that's
Citizens
going to two
committee.
separate
They're two
committees.
separate
I just want to be
committees.
clear on.
Just
which
let
way
me
you're
speak to a
headed.
little bit about this in general, because I've been doing this for years. The housing elements have a cycle, and typically, while communities can do some preliminary work towards what might be coming, until we receive the numbers known as the Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers, which are handed down from the regional government, in this case, the Association of Bay Area Governments. Cities can only guess at what they're going to need to accommodate. I mean, for us, it's somewhat easy because we're small and we know the sites which might be the ones that would need to be used. But until we actually get those numbers, most cities don't spend too much time on this effort because we don't know exactly what we're going to be asked. Now, having said that, what many communities do, and I don't know if we've done that before, but the housing elements I've worked on, once we get the numbers and we know the process needs to get started, the communities that I've worked for have had a citizens, it's usually like a task force. It varies in size. The city council, puts out applications or asks for applications. People, put their name or their names in the hat, and then the council decides, who should be on that committee. And they generally provide the full oversight in the sort of development and production of the housing element itself. I don't know if we've done that here. No, we've not done that here. So it is a very common thing, and it's a great way to engage the community on multiple levels, and that starts a couple of years usually before the housing element has to be adopted, because usually we get the numbers at least a couple of years before the adoption. So I think that that's an excellent idea that hasn't been used here, and that's something that we could definitely use.
And what I'm suggesting here is that we get ahead before it gets actually to committee, that we inform the public, right, of the impact of this housing legislation. Because once it gets to committee, then it's going to be very difficult to overturn it. If we give you all the information, then you make up your mind as to what position you want to take. Then you write your government officials as to what positions you want them to do.
And that is actually separate from the housing element itself.
Yes.
So my suggestion might be something along these lines. the council's talked about an ad hoc committee, which would be awesome. It could certainly help with some of the staff work to, do the things you mentioned, understanding implication, impacts, and response. And maybe from that, ad hoc group and, some sort of documents could be produced and, we could, agendize it in a certain way to have the residents come. They could have presentation, give their feedback. But I think that we have an opportunity here to maybe use the ad hoc committee as a jumping off point for providing a lot more information and getting input to the public regarding the legislation.
Yeah. Now, to your point, there's going to be a meeting April the 6th that Cupertino is holding at the Cupertino Center, and that includes Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, and I can't remember the third one. There are 3 cities. April 6th from 1:30 to 3:30, and they're going to be talking specifically about the impact of CASA, Compact, and SB 50. So then you make up, we won't be able to move that fast, see. So I think one of the things you need to do is spread the word around so that other citizens would know about it, which leads me to the next point here on social media policy.
Okay. Are we ready to move off housing?
I don't know. I think so.
Yeah, I think I wanted to make one more comment here. I mean, to what Mr. Labouvet said, and maybe to bring Terry into this because he comes from a planning background. Looking at what we can do proactively with our general plan, we're going to have to watch very carefully because the state is going to be looking at cities that have changed their general plan to try to block development and making what we have done proactively maybe not viable. But keeping our fingers in the pies. In the pots with all the different cities, what's going on, keeping an eye on that. I know Terry does that as part of his day-to-day work, but if we have a citizens commission or some other version of this, really looking to our other cities, bringing in the resources, learning what we can do to mold our general plan. One other, again, just kind of sub-item on this would be to have our citizens, and I don't know what city staff might be able to do, if anything on this, is to review our CC&Rs because many of our neighborhoods came from subdivisions that have CC&Rs that may have some binding things that are contracts between the homeowners. Those may or may not survive state action. But I think we need to survey our CC&Rs because, for example, the Blanchard neighborhood has pretty strong CC&Rs that do affect the church. And they might have been useful in looking at that. My neighborhood is the Billy Jones Railroad neighborhood. We have CC&Rs, and I know they affect ADUs, which is something that affects the plans. We need to look at those, make sure the citizens know what their own CC&Rs are, and then help educate people how that relates to housing.
Good. And you feel like you've got enough on the housing priority here? Probably
Anything
too
else
much,
you can serve
right?
up? Yeah.
There's a lot of notes over here on that one.
So Terry, are you still breathing?
Well, I will say this is, I think, the 5th council priority session I've done this year with other agencies, and every one of them housing has come up. So it's clearly a major issue, obviously. Okay, so on to the next potential new goal, and just looking around here, this clearly is a goal that you all agree needs to come back to you in some for formal adoption. Okay,
yes.
Moving on to the next one.
The wildfire prevention and emergency preparedness.
Excellent, very good. So we have wildfire prevention and emergency preparedness. I'll ask the question this way: what is it that you want to see get accomplished as a result of this priority? What's the vision for this priority?
That we enhance the public involvement. Now, the police department is looking over, is actually going to implement CERT, right, which is a program where citizens get trained. And they're also going to expand it to include Neighborhood Watch. And this way we don't have to implement a new program called BAT. Because there's a cost with BAT, and Neighborhood Watch is funded as it is today. There are 8 different areas in Monte Sereno today that are Neighborhood Watch knowledgeable, and 4 of them are active and 4 of them are not. So I think we need to revive them. Lon Allen is here. He will be certified. Him and Mary will be certified in 2 months. There's going to be another meeting on April the 25th with CERT, and they're going to bring all the CERT people in Monte Sereno. There are 18 of them together, so we can revive this program. So I think, building awareness, and then like Lon Allen said, we can build a website.
Okay. So first item here is involving the public, making the public aware, and 2 vehicles for that are expanding CERT and starting a neighborhood watch program.
And alongside of that, there's also a weed abatement program that I think we need to revive. Or I think
it is a county program.
The county program.
So that's an ongoing program that the county operates.
Yeah, so we need to make citizens aware of that. I think the citizens will have to pay if they wanted their properties.
So the way the program works is all property owners have a responsibility to reduce weeds on their property, and if they don't, the county goes out periodically throughout the year. They identify the properties that have not complied. If they don't comply, they're given notice and an opportunity to comply. Ultimately, if they don't, they get placed on a list. The cleanup is done, and the expenses of those cleanups are billed to them and are put on their tax roll. But that is purely a county function, not a city function. We could perhaps encourage people to clean up their yards, but other than that, it is a county program.
Okay, very good. So other aspects of this priority, if there are any, yes.
Yeah, I think the important aspect is how to get out of here if there's a fire. So which gets back to the freeways, the Highway 9 issue, the trees on that, and what needs to be cleaned on that, or Winchester. So, and I guess it gets into setting up a committee that's basically drives this whole thing, and whether it's an ad hoc committee or some other citizen committee. But we need to get it up to the level that we have more people directly involved with looking at everything that is necessary to prevent the fire and to be able to have those emergency exits in place.
Okay, so, and we've heard that multiple times today about trees both being a safety hazard and a impediment to evacuation.
Right, and a fuel also.
Yeah, perfect, very good.
And we have a CERT leader for Monte Sereno. His name is Patrick Dirks, DIRKS. So we can have him involved in this as well.
Good, excellent, very good. What else do you, if there is anything else that you see that would go underneath this priority as part of the goal, what you want to see get accomplished?
Yes. Yeah.
Ed Turner again. Another aspect to disaster preparedness and community preparedness is individual preparedness. There are, in my view, 2 likely disaster scenarios here. We all know someday there's going to be a major earthquake. We don't know when, but it's going to come. We've been told that when the big one hits, 1,700 roads in the Bay Area will become impassable. We're not going anywhere. Fire comes, we can evacuate, and Rowena and I have been through that, okay? But an earthquake hits, we're going to be stuck here. I think the city ought to try to raise awareness with people about taking some steps to prepare themselves. Food, water, personal hygiene, those kinds of things. And probably not a lot the city can do other than communicate and try to raise awareness, but I believe that's worth doing. Thank you.
And could I just add in a little bit here? I've talked to the council about this a number of times, but maybe this is a good time to bring it in, because this actually does have some budget implications as well. As the council knows, staff has been involved on a number of levels and in bits and pieces of this, and has been moving forward with overall emergency and wildfire preparedness in general, even without it being a goal. A couple of things. Beyond the sending out information about Alert SCC for signups and holding wildfire preparedness meetings like the Ready, Set, Go program, what I believe, and I've communicated this, I believe, to most of the city council, is that we have needed and need even more than ever a staff resource that can take this on as their responsibility. And to that end, as I've noted, I've been having conversations with the town of Los Gatos because we share a police force, and in most communities, a person who's responsible for overall emergency management is usually embedded in the public safety component. And I have been given some indications from the town that they are likely to move forward with probably a part-time, closer to full than not, for an individual. And what my initial discussions with the town have been is that I would come to this city council and ask if you'd be willing to contribute a portion, considering our population versus their population and land area, of a contribution towards that position. Because it is, as it stands now, I as a city manager generally take on all of the responsibilities around emergency management. And while I enjoy learning a lot about all of it, it really is much more than I can do. And I think that having a lead person who has a lot of knowledge around that area and can really guide us as staff and as the council on things that we should be doing or that we're not doing that we should be doing, I think would be really helpful. So it is highly likely, given that this is a goal, you will see with the budget workshop that there will be a line item in terms of that particular position.
That part-time job with that. They could do both, right?
They could, but I don't think that we could find someone with the skill set of working the front office, communications, and emergency management.
Person, and as I think the other one, I agree. I think it's different skills, and I mean, like CERT, which is basically Los Gatos, because again, they outnumber us 10 to 1 in the police department. I would like to explore, as Terry said, contributing to a full-time Los Gatos person who would have the expertise.
Yes, generally emergency managers, they're, many of them even get bachelor's degrees and master's degrees in this particular topic, because particularly given, all the hazards we have to deal with in California, it's a whole skill set. So I think, if that happens and we get a budget item for that, we will definitely be able to have a person who's much more on top of it, I would say, than the potential we have currently under our current situation.
And the fact that council's rising this to the level of a above the waterline priority, where are the resources to support that elevation? Yes.
Yeah. I think we're going to need to flesh out many more things in the subcategories under the rubric of emergency preparedness. One thing I'll mention, it crosses over between the two, with communications and the emergency preparedness is, it's crossed my mind that we may want to create some sort of a welcome to Monte Sereno packet for new citizens to make sure they know what their resources are, and get that out to them. And then the other idea that's occurred to me as we were looking, we've talked, Terry and I have talked about, and he's been working on things related to block leaders, which relates also to Neighborhood Watch and CERT and all of that. So it's all going to come together. But we could also look at getting, again, physical information out to people by having people walking the neighborhoods. It just occurred to me. We could have block leaders, Neighborhood Watch people, but we could also maybe engage the Youth Commission in getting physical paper, whether it's newsletters or flyers or how to prepare for your home, the individual preparedness, getting that into people's hands physically. That's what we need to do. And then people see the city getting them information and putting it in their hands as opposed to saying it's up on the website, which may or may not be used.
Okay, so we have 10 minutes.
Excellent. Yes, we do. And are there any other new goals that council would like to consider? I will tell you right now that what you have is you have 3 from the existing list that will carry over, and then I heard 2 new goals, and 5 is just such a nice number for your priority goal list going forward. Having said that, are there any additional goals that you would like to consider? I think we are ready to move towards wrap-up, and actually we have a public comment period here. the second
Yes.
public comment period. So,
Yes, so.
Mayor Turner?
So let me now open it up for public comments, although you guys were,
Yeah,
giving
it's-
us comments, and I think that was really great. The collaboration is really good.
I agree.
And we encourage you to reach out to us in a very positive way. Yes, Mr. Anonymous in the back?
Suggestion for a goal. Right now, the city has nearly $6 million in reserves, and I believe those reserves are invested in what is the equivalent of a money market fund. And we've had millions of dollars invested in the equivalent of a money market fund for decades. If the city were a person, it would never be able to retire. Obviously, I'm not talking about the city retiring, but this is fiscally irresponsible to have so much money put away in something that is not getting a meaningful return. The market is very high right now, and it will go down, but in the long run, it will go up. And I believe that a really significant and important goal should be for the city to examine and try to determine how it can invest its reserves in something that will return better long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Allen?
Well, I appreciate Omar's comments. When I looked into it, we had to put our money into LEAF, Local Agency Investment Fund, because it is safe, which, by the way, translates into we were earning 28 basis points, which is the reason why when I was mayor, we paid off our unfunded liability to CalPERS because they were charging us 750 basis points, and you don't borrow at 750 to earn 28. But I think there are incredible restrictions on general law cities where, unlike individuals, the problem is to earn more. That means risk. And I think with the public's money, so, I invite this council to look into it. Maybe there's some choices that we missed that are incredibly safe, but it's not our money. It's the public's money.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
And just to that point, we have a contract which we signed on to more than a year ago for the user and regulatory fee study, as well as for looking at the finance officer's position because she is retiring this year. And another piece to that which we had was looking at the city's investment policy, which was a direction from actually last year from the city council during the budget, was for us to look at it. So they're working on an analysis of our investment policy, and they will be providing a paper that we will provide to you as part of the budget compilation.
Yeah. So let me just say this. I think we will take the material that had been generated today, we will organize it, we will flush it out, and then we will assign some priorities on this. Then we will bring the set of goals back before the council for adoption, and then we will get back to you. We will keep you informed. And I want to thank you for coming here today. It's encouraging to know that people are taking an interest in what we do, and your input will actually help us do a better job. So I want to thank Terry and the city staff and Mr. Spano here for the efforts that they've done in making this event happen. Thank you so much. And we have 5 minutes to boot.